Hello, and thank you for joining me. I'm Dr. Jeff Daly. I'm a Harvard-trained child and adolescent psychiatrist with over 25 years of clinical experience. This evening, I'm going to be talking to you about a very important, timely issue, the issue of the level of stress and anxiety that our children and adolescents are feeling due to the COVID pandemic. At no time in my 25 years of practice have I seen a societal environmental issue have such an impact on our children and adolescents. Today, we're going to be talking about the unique stressors that this pandemic has caused our children and adolescents. We're going to cover the presentation of anxiety and stress in children and adolescents. It presents differently in children and adolescents. Children and adolescents are not just smaller adults. And we think back of how we dealt with our own stress and anxiety as an 8-year-old versus a 17-year-old versus now. It's very different. So we're going to talk about how it presents in children and adolescents. And finally, what we can do as parents, as guardians of these kids, to help them not only move forward, but really to thrive in this new normal. So, how is this pandemic impacting our kids? Um, our kids respond with anxiety and stress to sudden, new, unpredicted changes. And at no time in recent history have we had such sudden changes in our lives. They go outside now, they're asked to wear a mask. They look around, everyone else is wearing a mask. They're told to be sure they can stay away from and social distance from their friends, from the people who they love. Uh, their world of play in the younger kids has completely changed. The ability to congregate socially, as so many of our teens desire, is no longer possible. Suddenly, mom and dad are home. There have been changes in our jobs. There have been changes in our social contacts as a family due to concerns about a virus that is invisible, that is real, that we really have to be careful about to avoid getting sick and worsening consequences. So, this is a very real thing that has resulted in some significant increase in stress and anxiety amongst our children and adolescents. Yet at the same time, as parents, there's a lot we can do to help support them and help them get through this and to thrive at a time of stress. Our children, for the first time in all of their lives, other than an occasional snow day, have been asked to no longer be at school, to suddenly be home in front of a computer trying to learn. And now we're at a point where some may continue to do some online learning, and some are being asked to return to the school buildings. So all of these things cause significant anxiety. In our clinic, one of the first things that we talk to our families and our kids about is that not all anxiety is bad. Anxiety gets a terrible rap in our society. Let's avoid anxiety, let's avoid stress, let's do whatever we can. But in reality, some level of anxiety, as this Time magazine cover story indicated, some anxiety can be very helpful and very good. It's because of anxiety that we took the precautions we needed to see the numbers of cases in New York State go way down from being very high. That was due in part to anxiety. It's due to anxiety that you may be watching this video because you're worried about your kids. And so a lot of good things come out of anxiety, and anxiety results in progress for us. So some level of anxiety is okay. The problem is sometimes it becomes so intense uh, that it goes beyond what is developmentally normal. There's certain developmentally normal fears. As an infant, if somebody suddenly comes up to a baby, a new relative, and grabs the baby out of mom's hands, the baby will have an anxiety reaction, will start screaming and crying and want to be back with their mom, which is developmentally normal. In preschool, our kids become fearful of things like animals, the dark, the monster under the bed. Again, normative anxieties. Once they reach the school age, A lot of times they have specific realistic fears. They begin at that age to start to see that the world isn't completely a safe place, and they start to have certain fears that are realistic type fears and phobias. Then finally, in adolescence, our brain reaches a developmental point where we begin to fear fear itself. It's a change, but a significant change, because this is a time where, as a teenager, we can start to experience things like panic attacks, and we can start to avoid experiences that in the past caused us significant anxiety, social points of social embarrassment, points of not being able to perform academically or through sports or in the arts. And then we become so fearful of having that fear experience again, we avoid the activity. The concern, while we all have anxiety, we've all had anxiety during this pandemic, the concern that you may be moving or your child may be moving into an anxiety disorder is when there's a real persistence in the worry and fear. It's taking up a large amount of their day. For children and adolescents, there can be some periods where they have a break from anxiety, but if you're seeing that it's taking up more and more of their time, it's of concern. If it's causing them marked distress, they're really upset about what they're worrying about. It's really causing them emotional distress. And this may result in some avoidance of going outside, avoidance of going to bed when you need to, avoidance of going to school or seeing a friend that is safe to see. um, these are some points of avoidance that are a concern. While we all experience anxiety, one of the concerns that really comes to mind for our children and adolescents is when it starts to cause them functional impairment, meaning it's impairing their ability to learn, their ability to play, their ability to socialize, their ability to function within the family, to do certain activities that the family enjoys. When the anxiety is impairing that, we get more and more concerned that we're moving into an anxiety disorder. Anxiety is incredibly common. While people may not talk about their anxieties or their kids having an anxiety problem, it's as common as asthma. It happens in about 14% of our children and adolescents, and it can present differently at different ages. We see a lot of separation anxiety during childhood, before adolescence, so it's hard to be dropped off. And right now, with this pandemic, we may see an increase in separation anxiety. And very interesting point of separation anxiety is that quite often the fear of the child is that something bad is going to happen to mom or dad. That if they can see mom and dad are going to be okay, even though we know that's not completely true, but that's how a child's mind works. And that if they can't see them, if dad is going back to work or if mom's going to the store, perhaps they could get sick, perhaps something bad could happen to them. As we move into adolescence, we see higher rates of social phobia, difficulty in social situations, and also, as we talked about a little bit earlier, panic attacks, that feeling like your heart is pounding, that you're feeling overwhelmed, a sense of doom. It can last anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. You get short of breath. And in these episodes have incredible, strong physiologic response. And oftentimes individuals end up in the emergency room, or an ENT is called, because there's such concern that the person has such physical distress. But we see that more in adolescence. So, what is it we look for in our children and adolescents that may be suggesting that they're experiencing anxiety and stress? And one of the most common presentations of anxiety in children and adolescents are physical complaints: the tummy ache, the headache, the queasy feeling, the butterflies in the stomach. I feel dizzy. All of these things can be manifestations of anxiety. They commonly result in us bringing our child into the primary care's office to be sure something else isn't going on. But what we usually see is they're associated with an environmental stress. When it's time to leave the house, when it's time to go to school, when it's time for mom or dad to leave the house and the babysitter to take over, we suddenly see the presentation. When it's time to go to bed, a presentation of the onset of these physical complaints. Because you need to remember that our anxiety center that we all have in our brain that protects and helps us fires and innervates different organs in our bodies. It controls our breathing. It controls our heart rate. It controls blood flow to our stomach. So when we start to get real anxious, all the blood flows out of our stomach into our arms and legs, getting us ready for a fight or flight response. And when there's not a real stressor in front of you, when we've created it within our brain, it feels strange. It feels weird for the kids. They will commonly present with these problems. Another common phenomenon is problems with sleep, either real trouble with the initiation of sleep, needing mom and dad, having a terrible time relaxing, because at night we are all left with our own thoughts and our worries. So it can be a time that the worries can amplify due to a lack of distraction. So that can be a presentation. A middle of the night awakening. Everyone wakes up several times throughout the night, moves around, repositions their body, and then quickly fall back to sleep. If you wake up in an anxious state, you suddenly pop up. You say, "Where's mom and dad? I need to go down the hall. I need to be comforted. I need help." And there can be this real pattern of back and forth in the night, needing a lot of reassurance. Changes in eating, either excessive comfort eating of a lot of carbs and a lot of food, or a real loss of appetite due to that queasy feeling that sometimes anxiety can give, can be presentations. A sudden avoidance of things that the child really likes, hanging out with a certain friend, playing a sport, being involved in some activity, seeing some relatives, where they become suddenly very avoidant of those activities, suggests they may be experiencing some anxiety. There's a neediness to anxiety for our kids where they're coming to us suddenly. And initially, it may feel nice that our kid needs us, that our teenager's asking us for reassurance, but then it really becomes excessive and becomes like a black hole where you cannot fill or give enough reassurance, and the questions come up time and time again. We can see a sudden onset of difficulty concentrating and focusing. That wasn't a chronic problem. At times, people bring kids in wondering if they have an attention issue, and what it really is going on is as they're sitting quietly trying to do work, they're worrying excessively. Again, these symptoms are not present all the time. The beauty of being young is that you can have periods where you experience this intense anxiety, then periods where you feel better. But if most of your day results in a sense of distress and some avoidance, um, and it takes up a lot of your time, you need to consider getting your child further help. So, what can we do as parents and guardians of these kids to help them through this difficult time? The first and the most important, and probably one of the hardest things for many of my parents to do, is they have to take care of themselves first. It is very similar to when you're in an airplane and the direction is if the airbag ever falls in a crisis, you have to put the air mask on yourself first and then attend to your child. The same thing is true with a sense of anxiety and stress. It becomes very, very important that mom and dad are taking care of themselves, that they are getting enough rest, that they are having people to talk to about their stress, that they're being able to exercise, they're being able to have positive social interactions and get a break from some of the stressful events in their life. Um, by doing that, you're going to be in a better position to take care of your child, and you're going to be modeling some of these really helpful behaviors to your child and adolescent. Another piece that we have learned and seen over the last several months in our clinical practice is, and it's reinforced, we've known this for a long time, is that routine is really important to children and adolescents. And due to the pandemic and the quarantine, so many of us have had our routine thrown. We have countless numbers of our patients who are up till 3, 4 in the morning on social media and playing video games, sleeping through half the day, not seeing the sun or getting outside till 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That's associated with their circadian rhythms being off. They don't feel well. They're more prone to stress and anxiety. So, working on continuing to have a specific bedtime, a time to get up, can be really valuable to the children and adolescents and really can help them. If you're out doing at home learning, being sure that there's a specific time for homework, then a specific time for fun, family time, working in and very, very importantly, working in consistent exercise. All of us, our children, us as parents, due to the quarantine, due to the pandemic, all the gyms are closed. There's no gym class. All the sporting events are very few have restarted. So implementing a regular routine of exercise for the family can be incredibly valuable. Exercise is known to result in a significant reduction in our anxiety levels. It helps oxygenation of some important parts of the brain and the release of endorphins, which is a natural relaxing chemical that comes from exercise. So implementing that regular exercise really becomes valuable for our children, adolescents, and ourselves. Um, Also, uh, modeling safe behaviors for our kids gives them a sense of control, that they can do something to protect themselves. There's evidence that wearing a mask does help protect you. So modeling you wearing a mask when you're out in public, social distancing, washing your hands, being careful about what you touch and how you touch your face. All of these things are very good modeling for your child and adolescent. And then they can also give them a sense of control that they can do something to protect themselves from this invisible virus. And it can be very helpful. Another very important piece is being sure so many of our families, as we've talked to them, in the background of every room is a 24-hour news station. The 24-hour news is built to increase our anxiety so we continue to watch. That is not good for you. It's not good for your kids to have this constant bombardment of scary story after scary story and anxiety provoking story. You want to stay abreast of what's going on. You want to know things. You can check your phone news a couple times a day and you will get all the information you need. But we really want to get this background of 24-hour news off uh, so it isn't constantly coming at us as adults and our kids. Also being aware during this time that we're all together so much. Our kids hear everything we don't want them to. So be really mindful that if you're having a difficult conversation or you're venting to a friend about your own anxiety, that you're in a place that is giving you some privacy from your children and adolescents. Um, Hearing half of a conversation can really spike up their anxiety, or hearing you vent to an adult friend or family member may really spike up their anxiety. And lastly, and probably most importantly, it's really essential during these times that you do a daily check-in with your child and adolescent. Throughout the day, there may be something they've heard from a friend or heard on the bus or heard on the news that may really stir up their anxiety and stress. And so having a daily check-in to see if there's anything that's bothering them or worrying and inviting and opening that conversation can be really valuable to your child and adolescent. This is a list of some additional resources that families may find helpful. There are evidence-based websites with really good information on anxiety and stress in children and adolescents. But the take-home message from this is, number one, be sure you're taking care of yourself. Number two, structure your day. In your child's day, routine can be really helpful. Uh, be sure the family's getting appropriate exercise and rest. Um, Model those healthy behaviors that'll give your child a sense of control and empowerment. Uh, and also maintain that hope that while this is a difficult time, um, we are going to get better. This is going to get better, and our kids are going to get back to the enjoyment and the fulfillment that we want for them. Um, if you are at a point where you are getting more and more concerned that your child is really suffering and struggling, also reach out for professional help. There is a huge increase in telemedicine and telepsychiatry, telepsychology. So there are all kinds of resources that are still available, even if you don't want to go into a doctor's office at this point. Um, you can get access to really high quality health care and professional help that can help you help your child. Um, Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you stay safe and well. Thank you.